It's 9 o'clock. See? William, you good? Cool. Can I see who's on WebEx, please? Reynolds. Okay, perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. The time is currently 9 o'clock, and it is Tuesday, April 15th, and we are here for our budget work session. If you are able to stand, if you'll please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Wonderful. Okay. And first up, we do have item number 1, which is the Economist, and we have Ozma here. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. So today the first presentation is by our economist, Dr. Ming Hao Lee. He's here with us, so I would be handing it over to him.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's wonderful to see you.
Let me try the
again.
slides.
There you go.
There's a delay. Is there a mouse?
There it is. Right under there, there's a keyboard and you can...
Oh. Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Ming Hao Lee. I'm an associate professor and the Robert O. Anderson Endowed Chair from New Mexico State University. And thank you for this opportunity give me this opportunity to conduct this study and present the results. So the objective of this study is to project the gross receipt tax, or GRT, including equalization and property tax revenues for the fiscal years from 2025 to 2030. So the motivation for this is through a conversation with county personnel is that in recent years, we have experienced steady growth in revenue, and our budgeting practice is relatively has been relatively conservative, and as a result, we have a growing cash reserve. So there is a need for a more sophisticated forecasting to better anticipate the revenue growth. So here is a graph from our own budget book showing the growth in the cash reserve, and including the general fund and total cash. So you can see in the past 4 years, 5 years, there have been a steady and a rather rapid growth in the cash reserve. So for this study, the GRT and the property tax are chosen as a target for forecast because they are most dependent on economic factors. Other revenue items, such as grant or state distributions, so those are more dependent on policies, and they are not suitable for economic forecasting. And in the fiscal year of 2024, so these two items accounted for 21% for GRT and 19% for property tax. So they are substantial parts of our total budget. And in the past, we have been underestimating these two items. So in the fiscal year of 2023, if you compare the preliminary budget versus the actual budget, GRT was underestimated by 12%, and the property tax was underestimated by 5%. So the hope is that through this projection, we can provide more accurate estimation of these two tax revenue items. Okay. So the method used in this study in general is based on historical data and does not account for policy changes. So I know many of you are curious. So whether this includes the new tariffs, and unfortunately it doesn't, because it's purely based on historical data. But I have some words on the tariffs toward the end. So the forecasting is based on their previous trajectory. It means that I assume the GRT for next year will depend on the GRT in the previous years, and so that's a property tax revenue. And then it also depends on the trajectory of external economic factors. So it may depend on, say, GDP, employment, and housing units, etc. So the model used in this study is called ARIMA, or Autoregressive Integrated Moving Average Model. So this is the workhorse for time series forecasting. So when you have a data that move over time, this is the standard method to use. And this is the method adopted in this study. And later you will see I provide a different range of estimates. And those are from different possible specifications of the ARIMA model. So within this model, so you can choose different economic variables. So you can say GDP, employment in our local area, housing units, a combination of them, or just one of them. So you can choose the number of lag terms. It means that maybe GRT depends on the GRT from last month, last quarter, or last year. So you can experiment with those. And finally, it depends on the correlation of forecasting errors. It means that, so if I guessed too high this time, am I gonna guess too high next time, or do you think the next time will be accurate? What kind of adjustment should I make if I guess too high or too low? Okay, so through experimenting with the different combinations of these factors, I end up with 54 models for each of the two forecasts. And then historical data was separated into a training set, which is used to estimate the parameters, and there's a testing set to tell us which of the 54 models are better than others. And besides my own estimation, one of my former students now is an economist for the New Mexico state government, and he's one of the 11 economists in the what's it called? Consensus Revenue Estimation Group. So this is the group that provides the forecasting for the state, and he's one of the person in the group. Just to confirm my own forecasting, I asked him to provide independent forecasting, and just to stay independent, we didn't communicate our methods. So that's his model is a black box for me, but just know it's the state method applied to our county. So that model is called the CRAG. So the GRT data I used to fit the models is from the New Mexico monthly local government distribution reports. They are commonly known as RP500. So these are Excel sheets for each month. And so they have been available since 2003. So there are over 200 of these Excel files. I wrote a program to load them for analysis. Since GRT data is monthly, so all the analysis and the forecasting were first performed with the monthly data and then aggregated to the annual level for the final decision making. Okay. So there are several jumps in the historical data for GRT that needs some adjustment. So there is the addition of the spaceport tax in 2008. There was a tax rate increase in 2015. And there are a couple of months with very high monthly tax revenue, like a spike in the data. So if you read the full report, you will see how I adjust for those anomalies. So that's for the GRT data. The property tax data comes in the annual data form. And actually, what I found the longest data series is for taxable value. It's not for tax revenue itself. But in the past, our effective tax rate has been stable. So just based on taxable value, you can get a good idea of our tax revenue. So my forecast is first based on taxable value and then converted to tax revenue using the effective tax rate. Okay. So here are the forecasting results. First for a monthly GRT. And again, this is going to be added up to the annual level for our final decision making, but this is the original form of the projection. So that line there, vertical line, is where the forecast starts. So you can see in the past, our tax revenue has experienced steady growth, especially in the past 5 years or 10 years. Okay. So the outside gray lines, so those are the range provided by all the 54 models. You can see it's like a bit wider range, but it's still like a general, all of them predicting an increasing trend. And the inside gray lines, those are the range provided by the top 20 best performing models. You can see that range is a bit narrower. Okay, so the red line after the vertical line, like the red line going straight up in the middle, so that's the average of the top 20 best performing models. And the line that's going up like a step, so that's the prediction by the Craig model. That's the model that the state government uses. So you can see the average of the top 20 models is very close to the state's Craig model, which gave us some confidence in my projection. But as you'll see, as time moves on, the range of forecasting diverges, which means that there will be more uncertainty in the future further down the road. So it's recommended that we update this forecasting regularly. Okay. So that's the monthly forecast, and then we added those up into the annual forecasting for our decision making. So because of the limit of space, here I only listed 3 years, but in the report, we have numbers for all 6 years from 2025 to 2030. And the way to read this table is that from on the top, that's the most optimistic estimation, and in the bottom is the least optimistic or most pessimistic estimation. And the middle two are the average of my top 20 and the Craig model from the state. Okay. So you can think of the top 20 average as the best guess from my models. Okay. So that's the GRT forecast, and here is the annual property tax forecast. And similar as the GRT forecasting, the property tax forecasting is laid out in the same way, from the most optimistic to the most pessimistic scenarios. And the policymakers, you can decide which one to adopt based on your situations. But you can see just the same as the GRT, the property tax also is projected to increase at a similar rate in the past several years. And again, the average of my top 20 best models are very similar to the prediction of the Craig model. To conclude, forecasts from different models, model specifications consistently suggest we will experience continuing growth in both GRT and property tax revenues. So policymakers can choose which scenario to adopt based on your risk tolerance. So can you afford, say, a little bit of spending above the budget, or you cannot tolerate that? And also it depends on what's your plan for the cash reserve. So do you want to maintain it at the same level, or do you want to drive it down a little bit? And again, the forecasting arrow grow with time, so continuous updates are recommended. And more confidence should be placed on near-term projections, and the long-term projections should be used with caution. So some discussions and caveats. So these forecasts are based on historical trends, so do not take into account policy changes such as the tariffs. And so these forecasts use some economic variables, and some of those are projected by other agencies. So that means their forecasting arrow will be passed down to my forecasting. So that's another source of uncertainty. And finally, the forecasting is only for GRT and the property tax revenue. And there are other major revenue items, like there's still a substantial uncertainty. And I imagine that with the current changes in policy, there may be a lot of uncertainty in the grant situation, which is beyond the scope of this study. Okay, so what about tariffs? So actually, we have our own study on tariff impacts, but because things are changing so rapidly, our postdoc has wrote 3 versions of the paper, and each time before we can send it out, the policy changes again. So we don't have the current estimates for with the reciprocal tariffs announced about 2 weeks ago. So I will cite numbers from the Yale Budget Lab, which uses the same model as we do. So the trade projections are mostly done at the national level. So we know the national level impacts. So it's a bit challenging to convert the national impact to our local level. According to Yale Budget Lab, with current tariffs, including the most recent reciprocal tariffs, the prices will increase by 2.9% overall across the board before consumers have a chance to make substitutions. So if they just buy exactly what they buy before, they will experience a 2.9% increase in the overall price. But the consumers will not stay the same. So they will. So if something becomes more expensive, they will switch to other things. So after switching, the collection of goods they buy, the price will still increase by 1.7%. So after substitution. Okay. So the price increase may be a good thing or a bad thing for our revenue, right? Because if price is higher, we can actually collect more GRT revenue, but then the consumers will also buy less. So these 2 factors are competing with each other. Okay, so I think maybe the real GDP growth will tell a better story. So it's projected that the US real GDP growth rate will slow down by 1.1 percentage points. So the historical average growth rate is about 3%. It's going to be lower by 1.1%, so like around 2% now with these tariffs. All right, so like one way to think about this is that the amount of the work that county is able to do will be decreased by 1.1%. So you have change in revenue, change in prices. Overall, the amount of work that you can get done will be down by 1.1%. All right, so that's based on the national average, and it requires some more work to estimate what's the impact on our county, which is beyond the scope of this study. All right, so that's my forecast for the next several years. So do I take questions or? That's it. All right, thank you.
Of course, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? I know that Commissioner Chapato, Vice Chair, has joined us on WebEx, and we also have Commissioner Reynolds. If there's any questions, if you'll please ask them.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Of course, Vice Chair.
Thank you, and apologies for joining late. And I didn't get the name of the presenter.
Oh, this is Ming-Hao Li from New Mexico State University.
Mr. Howdy, good morning.
Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. Please forgive me. So you had a slide that was showing the prices were going higher. And so am I to understand this, and because I came in a few minutes late, you're saying that because prices will increase, and if we're counting on GRT, for example, building of houses, because prices are increasing, so then building houses, there will be fewer houses built, in your opinion, so GRT might either stall or be reduced. Is that correct?
So there are two competing factors. So the price will go up, and from that you have higher GRT because it's proportional to the sales price. But the quantity will be going down, so you have a lower GRT. So these two factors will be competing with each other. So the end result is actually uncertain and needs further analysis.
All right. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Any other comments or questions, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question, and I think it's more of whether, I guess when we're looking, I'm assuming we're going to be utilizing this potentially model. And I think the thought is where are we going to do? Are we using the average or, higher or lower, where we want to put that? And so I guess the question would be is, I guess, is this going to be part of the discussion with the budget, or will we have that discussion of where we want to do projections? Because I think one of the questions, and I guess my concerns is that if you're doing an average, is the average the right? I guess when you're looking at the average, and I know you showed how it was very close to the Craig model, and so I'm wondering if, when you do the average, is it the average of all the models, or is there a specific like a P, you're looking basically between your P25 and P75, so then you take out your outliers, so you don't have the min-max swaying.
Yeah, in a sense, I'm taking out of the outliers because the average is the average of the top 20 best performing models.
Okay.
So in the average doesn't include the other, 34, the lower performing models.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And then I think the other, and I think is Commissioner or Vice Chair Chaparro had mentioned, I think my concern is, and I know, like you've said, when you're looking at tariffs, you're using a national average, and while everything is, the landscape is changing every day because we don't quite know where or how this policy is going to finally end up into, I guess, in a more permanent for the foreseeable future, because it seems like it changes every day. But is there potential that while we noted for GRT, is there potential that when we're looking at growth, and I'm looking at economic development pieces of it, if we don't have companies that are moving to Doña County, is there potential that could actually decrease if they're not coming in because of tariffs, because they're not looking to maybe relocate, or they find something that's more suitable for them? If we lose those opportunities because of the tariffs and the sloth in the economy, could that further decrease our projected GRT revenue?
So again, like that would be the subject of a different study, because it's rather complex to decompose the national impacts into the local impact. So right now, like the average of the top 20 is still the best estimate. And if you want to be conservative, maybe you can adopt one of the lower scenarios. So either the minimum of the top 20. And so the national GDP projected decrease by 1%. So before we get further information or further analysis, that will be the best guess for our local economy also.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and appreciate the efforts here in sharing these models with us.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Sir, one last question for you, and this is what I've been just thinking about and maybe hearing on the news. Do you think, in your professional opinion, that because of the tariffs and the price increase, that the businesses will stall coming into Doña County as they did during COVID? Just based on which, I'm not asking for a perfect answer. I'm just asking if that is what you think will happen.
So like currently my best guess is still just based on the national average. So to give you a better answer, I will need to do some further research. Sorry.
Oh, no, no problem. I mean, you're the expert. That's what my thinking is, but I'm not an economic specialist. But thank you so much.
Right, guys. So I hesitated to provide any answer without looking into the evidence first. That's why.
Chair, if I may, Dr. Lee, thank you so much for your presentation today. Jonathan Macias, Assistant County Manager. As y'all know, in doing the agenda review, you noticed that the New Mexico Economic Development Department is on the agenda for next week during the BOCC session. May I suggest, Vice Chair, that that's a question better suited for Mr. Mark Roper, and we can email him and let him know that that's one of the inquiries, because they would know better throughout the state as well as the region in terms of businesses that are seeking to site here, and they can also reach out to the New Mexico Partnership and other entities. I think Dr. Lee's modeling is more to give us an idea of direct impact for GRT, some idea of consumer confidence, although it's always a bit of a crystal ball. So maybe we can look at previous analysis of what happened when there were other tariffs in the previous administration. And then, of course, he's also highlighting the impact of the assessors and the funding there. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Macias, for that. I just think that asking everyone the question so that we can start to really look at what options we have, because we're going to get different responses from different folks who specialize in this. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And also, we do have a copy of the presentation, and I believe our budget office is going to forward that out to the commission. So if there is any other follow-up questions, we can definitely direct those to Ozma and get those questions answered for any follow-up. And then if we need to have a further discussion at a later date at a meeting, we can. I know that the tariff conversation is definitely one that is on a lot of people's minds. So we can definitely do that if needed. But I want to say thank you for your work. I really have enjoyed your presentation. I think like 4 or 5 months ago, it was amazing. So I just want to say thank you. And I think we're all really looking forward to working with you. And I think our staff is really excited to have you on as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, we do have our main topic today, which is going to be our budget for FY 2026. And we have our budget team here today, so take it away. Let's do it.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Lucio Luttrell, Budget and Research Officer. So we come before you today with our first budget work session. We have completed all budget meetings with departments. We do have a few follow-up meetings to do the rest of this month. But at this point in time, we will be presenting the budget as requested and as adjusted throughout budget meetings. The agenda for today is we'll be going on quickly over the budget calendar. We'll look at historical data and FY25 forecasts. The bulk of this presentation is the FY26 budget overview, and we do want to provide a strategic plan budget alignment update to the board. And looking at the budget calendar for the rest of the FY26 development process, we are having our work session today on the 15th. We do have 2 board meetings coming up on the 13th and 27th, so we will use those board meetings as either budget work sessions or preliminary budget approval, but we do have to submit our preliminary budget to the state by May 31st. We also have scheduled a special meeting for July 29th for the 4th quarter and final budget approval. We typically go the second meeting in July, but we will need some additional time to be able to close out the fiscal year. So the 29th is the last Tuesday of the month. And our final budget is due to DFA on July 31st. So this chart will show our total revenue and expenditure growth for the past 10 years. So this does not include grants. So we try and remove grants because they come in various points in time. Some years they come in higher, some years lower. But as you can see, there has been steady growth throughout the last 10 years. revenues have exceeded expenditures in all years except for FY 15, 17, and 18. And we're projecting that to occur in FY 25 as well, which is pretty good considering that since I've been here with the budget office, we have budgeted to have higher expenditures than revenues for each year. This chart will show our general fund growth. As you can see, there has been a steady increase in our general fund revenues. The bottom line shows our general fund transfers out, and what that is it's transfers out to support other operations and other funds such as detention center, utilities, roads, and other capital project funds. This year, we are anticipating to have around 117 million in budgeted revenue, or in actual revenue, where we budgeted around 111 million, and we are expecting that to be around $6 million higher. And with our adopted expenditure budget, we're anticipated to come in around 97 million actuals versus what we had budgeted at close to 105 million. So it is consistent with our spending in prior years, as we typically spend less than what we budget for. And with our revenues and the conservative approach we've taken in the past, we typically have revenues coming higher. And this slide really expands on the slide that our economist had. And so this shows 10 years. As you can see, our cash has increased year over year, even with us budgeting to use cash reserves. So as you can see, our total cash, we're anticipating to come down a little bit for FY 25, but with general fund, we're still anticipating a little bit of an increase. So from there, we'll move on to our budget overview, and we did want to highlight a few items. First off, our forecasting of major revenues. So as the economist presented, he did forecast our GRT and property taxes for us, which are our two largest revenue sources. And so we will be using the top 20 average model, and that's what we built in to our revenue budget. But for property taxes, we are unable to use the forecast because DFA limits us to a calculation on how we can budget for those. But we will be using the property tax forecast for future planning in anticipation as to what will come in over budget. We also will have the first year of a standalone economic development department. So we've established a new department recently, and will be establishing a budget going into FY 26 for this department. With fire rescue, we plan on expanding and preparing to provide ambulance service in county areas. So you'll see that throughout the presentation. And lastly, we do want to highlight lodgers tax. So recently, the board passed the lodgers tax ordinance, which is a tax applied to revenue generated by businesses offering lodging services within county areas. There are multiple benefits to this, including tourism promotion, which results in job creation, local business support. We could also use the funding for infrastructure improvements, such as parks, museums, even roads that lead to tourist sites. And it does improve the quality of life, as we can use the funding for various attractions. But we have not established a budget for the lodgers tax yet, so we're not sure what the amounts will come in as, but as we get an idea of how much revenue the county will receive, we'll begin to establish a budget for this. So we'll jump into our countywide sources of revenue. I do want to highlight that we do show our FY25 adopted budget to give a better comparison of what the BOCC adopted last July versus what we're presenting to you today. So this does not include any mid-year or during the year budget adjustments. It's just from July until now. Our first line we have is we're budgeting for $9 million or 6% increase in our tax revenues. So this encompasses GRT, property tax, other tax revenues such as our payment in lieu of taxes, flood tax, compensating tax, gas tax, and cannabis tax. GRT is our largest portion of this at around 95.4 million. We also are anticipating around a 4.7 million budget increase for service revenues, which is around 17%. And this is made up of care prisoner revenues, wastewater fees, franchise fees, fleet service fees, and other service revenues that the county has. A majority of that 4.7 is related to federal care of prisoners, which was around a $4.5 million increase. We also are budgeting for a 2.7 or 38% increase in other revenues. So this is made up of fire and EMS distributions, Secretary of State funding, penalty and interest, late charges, license and premises, rental and lease revenue. But the biggest portion of this is anticipated chargeback revenue of $2 million for fire services and potential ambulance services. Our investment revenues, we have budgeted around a $2 million increase or 66%. So the prior 2 years, we kept a flat budget because we were unsure of the rates and what the Federal Reserve was gonna do. We do have discussions with the Treasurer's Office to help develop this budget. And they did recommend, Deputy Treasurer did recommend around a $5.9 million budget, but in discussion with the County Treasurer, we wanted to be a little more conservative due to how we are budgeting to use cash reserves and the uncertainty of those rates. So we do have that 66% increase. And the subtotal of this really makes up our operating revenue. So the total increase is around 18.5 million or 9%. You will see that the grants, there is a significant decrease of around 95 million. And the reason being is we have not included grant submissions yet into the budget. So grant submissions were due by departments at the end of March, and we'll be reviewing and getting those in the rest of this month. The chart on the right will show the breakdown of operating revenues. And as you can see, our tax revenues make up a majority of that at 77%, service revenues 16%, other revenues 5%, and investment revenues 2%. Next up is our general fund revenues. So we do like to highlight general fund because it is the county's primary operating fund for the county. It really defines the financial health of the county. And so I will begin with tax revenues, and you'll see that we have a significant jump of 27 million or 27%. And the reason being is due to the new GRT ordinances approved by the POCC back in September, it did lift certain restrictions. So the GRT that were once restricted and posting to restricted funds are now posting to the general fund. We also have service revenues around a $30,000 or 1% increase. Other revenues, 1.6 million or 45%. And that does encompass the $2 million chargeback revenue. So there was a net decrease amongst other revenues there. And then investment revenues of 1 million or 78%, to give us a grand total increase of 30 million or 27%. So within general fund, again, tax revenues are the primary source at 91%, with other revenues at 4%, service revenues at 3%, and investment revenues at 2%. So now we'll jump into the expenditure side of the presentation. It is the lengthier portion of the presentation. So we'll start with the important notes. So we have worked in a 3% unrepresented positions COLA, not including employees on a step plan. Since they are on a step plan, they will be getting their next step. We are working this into the budget and are waiting for the completion of a comp and class study to see what further adjustments are needed. And so this will most likely we'll have to work with HR and management team to look at the results and see what type of implementation plan we'll have. We have also included an 8.3% estimated health insurance increase. I do know at this next board meeting next week that there is a presentation on this, and I believe that amount has been adjusted to 8.7%. That impact was close to $1 million, and so the impact going up to 8.7%, I think, is an additional 50,000 countywide. We also have worked in union step increases as contractually obligated, so we're required to do these steps. We do have new positions that you'll see in a future slide, and I did want to highlight that the new positions and new capital requests are included in the expenditure figures that you're seeing throughout this presentation. So first off, we'll start with countywide expenditures. Personnel costs, we're budgeting for an increase of around 11.7 million or 13%. So this includes increases mentioned in the previous slides, but it also includes department requests such as overtime, callback, incentive pay, on-call shift differential pay, and any other personnel-related costs. Our operating costs, which is the largest portion, we're anticipating around a $4.4 million increase or 4%. Debt service is around $130,000 increase or 5%, which brings our total operations to an increase of around 16.3 million or 8%. Capital outlay, there's a slight decrease of 6.8 million or 13%. And again, the grants is we're working on grant submissions. We'll get that added into the budget and be presented to the board at the next work session or budget or BOCC meeting. The right side will show our total operations breakdown. A majority of our costs are in operations at 51%, and we also have personnel costs of 48%, and debt service makes up around 1%. So I do want to highlight here that the next slide is going to be a breakdown of this figure right here, our operating costs, and so you'll know what makes up this amount. So this is the slide with all the numbers, the department breakdown as summarized, and it does reflect our department operating costs. So we did break it down by department to show departments with the highest percentage increase. As you know from budget kickoff, management's direction was 2%, with the exceptions of the needs to be able to maintain operations and to promote professional development. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these lines. I'll highlight the ones with the highest increases and the departments with the lowest increases. But I will start with fire rescue at a $633,000 or 252% increase. And this is mainly due to the increase in staffing and the fire excise tax going away. Major increases include tactical bunker gear, medical expenses, uniforms, and volunteer insurance. The county manager's budget had a $646,000 increase or 110%. So this is mainly due to grant writing services, so we are now budgeting for it in the county manager's office versus finance. So on the other end of this chart, you'll see that finance had a large decrease. We also have included $225,000 for potential quality of life activities or contracts, $20,000 for youth commissions, and there are also some other miscellaneous items related to budget office that will now be budgeted within the county manager's budget. We have risk management at a $2.1 million increase or 36%, and that is mainly due to the county's law enforcement liability and general liability insurance. So those increases amounted to around $2.0 million, and were included a 3% CPI increase, not knowing what this amounts will be come January of next year. Animal control has an $86,000 or 23% increase, and this is mainly due to the needs to obtain equipment and supplies needed to get our veterinary operating as needed and to meet statutory requirements. Without those items, it's around a 2% increase. IT department had $735,000 increase or 22%. This year, several items will be centralized for the next budget cycle within IT versus having costs distributed across departments. So this includes the network lease, certain software license costs, some computer replacement items. Previously, they were taking an invoice and submitting a requisition with 30 different lines on it, and it was a nightmare to have to organize. And so we want to centralize all IT costs within IT. Additionally, some items required budget increases over the 2% due to cost increases, and so the increases were needed in order to be able to maintain IT operations.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I just have a quick question. I think there's a couple of places, I know obviously where you're highlighting the growth, and I'm just curious, and I guess maybe as we get on, and this will be for Mr. English, I'm curious if with everything being consolidated, and we don't have to answer it now, we can. I'm just curious if having it consolidated into one department will give us better visibility with the potential that we can find better synergies or even find ways that we could, in the future, find ways to even cut costs with that. And then, so it seems like if you're having it, and I know it's only, when we're looking at the budget, you have it spread out, so it may not matter, but I was just curious if having it all in one, it all makes it any more visible to the department, and maybe there's better ways to manage this in the future.
Hi, Ken English, IT Director. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sanchez, that's exactly what we're trying to do. With all of the software coming through the IT department, I mean, we regularly are reviewing those contracts and seeing, one, do we still need that software? Is there another software that would satisfy the same requirements that we could consolidate to? And so we're always looking for those opportunities. So bringing those in, and especially the things for the infrastructure, like, the network lease that's been divided up between all of the departments, and they have to budget for it each year when it really is an IT expense. So just coming out of that, everything out of my budget just makes more sense, and there's less work on the back end, like Lucia was saying. Having to take those invoices and divide it up between 30 departments is cumbersome.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you, and I appreciate it. I just, like I said, it makes a lot of sense to be able to have, you know, if you have, like, IT's like, it seems like a central service, and we have some of those departments that do that across all of the different departments, so it makes all the sense. So thank you. I just was wondering, so I appreciate the explanation.
One other item that we mentioned was, like most, we generally have in the past been just deploying or providing a desktop for all employees, and then that goes into our refresh cycle every 3 to 4 years. And the departments, if they wanted like a laptop or a tablet, something like that, then they had to budget for it themselves. And so what we're starting to do this next fiscal year is we will provide either a desktop or a laptop. You know, some people, a laptop just works out better. So that way the departments aren't having to budget for that additional equipment. It also puts it into our refresh cycle, because a lot of the times when it's bought to the department, we don't really have a lot of track, and we have devices out there that are 5, 6, 8 years old, and they're starting to have issues and things. So if all of that is kind of purchased through IT, now we can refresh it like we do all the other equipment.
And then I assume then we can have consistency maybe with occasional, you know, I think where we see certain jobs will probably require specialized equipment and stuff, but generally we have a standard process which then standardizes across the county, which makes it easier for us to be able to get parts, refresh, and do the whole thing, I would assume.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so I believe I was on probate. Probate has a $4,000 increase or 14%. $3,000 of that is for office equipment. So without that, they'd be within the 2%. Next up, HHS Health Fund, there is a $697,000 increase or 12%. And that is mainly due to moving budget for NMSU Extension Service and Food Resiliency into the Health Fund. So these were originally budgeted in the PILT Fund and external agency budgets. Also, there is the Medicaid Intercept, which is recorded here and has an increase of around $246,000. So without those three items, the increase would be about 1%. Utilities has around $141,000 budget increase or 8%. $140,000 of that is chemicals, so there are chemical needs, and we've been using more, and the cost has been going up. Treasurer Restricted Fund, $425. That fund is used for travel and training. Detention Center has $848,000 or 6% increase. So $600,000 of that is for the healthcare contract at the facility. Without that increase, there would be at 2%. And then the Assessor 1% fund, there's around a $57,800 increase or 5%. It is a restricted fund. Most of that was within data systems maintenance. And then so from there, I'm going to jump over to some of the larger decreases. And I'll begin with the airport budget. So there was a decrease around $8,400 or 7%. And this was primarily in repairs and maintenance. So they do receive an annual maintenance grant that they typically use. So they did decrease their budget due to the use of of having savings. Also, the fire restricted has around a $747,000 decrease or 14%. So this is mainly due to the fire excise tax not being there next year. So we'll be budgeting for the remaining balance. Clerk restricted fund is the recording and filing fund. It's a $44,000 decrease or 17%. It's a restricted fund that is primarily used for the recording and filing section. Constituent services has around a $27,700 decrease or 21%. And this is the going to be the third year of their standalone budget. So we're getting an idea of the actual cost to run the department. So we are right-sizing the budget. HHS Crisis Triage Center budget has a decrease of around $600,000 or 26%. And this is mainly due to not having startup costs this year as we had to budget for last year. Finance and purchasing had a decrease of around $383,000 or 52%, and this was due to the grant writing budget that was moved over to the county manager's office. Also, any expenditures related to the budget office personnel will now be under county manager. We have developed an economic development budget of $327,000, and so that includes $300,000 for professional services. The remaining $27,000 is for costs such as supplies, travel, and training. And so throughout the course of this year and the next year, we'll be able to determine the amount needed for that section. Other non-departmental categories are made up of OEM's initiative, law enforcement protection funds, GRT admin fees, spaceport, and water and sanitation GRT pass-throughs. farm and range, and LATCF funds. So this is just budgets not related to a specific department's operations. And I did want to highlight that OEM operating budget wasn't listed because it is now within grant section due to how Workday works and how the costs are being tracked. But I did want to highlight that they have an increase of around $3,000, which is within the 2%. So overall, operating increase is at 4%. And I will pause here for any department-specific questions for operating costs.
All right, thank you, Lucio. Commissioners, are there any comments, questions, concerns that you would like to ask? Anyone on WebEx?
None for me.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Reynolds.
yeah, I'd like to say that I really appreciate the detail in this presentation, in addition to the slides. And along with each slide, there's a lot of detail that actually supports the discussion we're having, and this is very refreshing to see. Thank you, Lucio.
Awesome. Yes, and I do want to say, Lucio, to you and your team and everyone that worked on this budget today, I as well really do appreciate the drive down details that we have. I appreciate that this was sent out ahead of time so that way we can look at it and actually understand what is going on, where those increases are coming from, and why. I think it's great. Something that I do kind of want to discuss, and Commissioner Sanchez, if you have any questions, please do chime in as well. I know that since we unallocated a lot of the GRT funding and it went into the general fund to kind of balance out the budget more so that it's better understood, I kind of want to have a conversation, or maybe this is a work session topic would be, and I know that I kind of came in when I was elected after Yes Care was selected. I know that was done the year prior to me joining the commission. I do kind of want to look at that. I do know that it does increase every year, and I do want to see where those increases are. So maybe if we can look at exactly what's going into Yes Care, where those increases are coming from, the method of payment that we're using. I kind of would like to see that in more detail. It does not have to be today, but I would like to see a work session topic on it, maybe late summer, early fall. But besides that, I know that you've worked really hard on this budget. I know that each department has worked very hard on this budget. I know that that 2% was challenging, but it looks like everyone did a pretty good job at justifying where those increases were at. And I'm really excited to see the Economic Development Division having a budget and looking at what's going into that. So I'm really excited. I'm excited about this budget. It looks like a good budget. Commissioner Sanchez, any comments or questions?
No, I think, kind of from the high level and even when you go down into the department level, I did appreciate it, the presentation and being able to review it, because I think one of the things that the public isn't seeing is the notes that you had highlighting this. And I know as I was going through this last week, after you sent it out, being able to understand, I know you did this very quickly from a high level, but as you get down into it, understanding the specifics of what drove each one of these changes makes it easy to see, and I'm appreciative of it. So that way, I think coming in, some of the questions that we had were already in the hopper, ready to go, but I appreciate the level of detail you provided to us.
Awesome. Any other questions from WebEx today? Seeing none.
All right, so we still have quite a ways to go. So that was a pause, but I'll get going on the next part.
No, but it's a good Good sign, Lucio.
Yeah, and I do want to communicate to the board as we communicate to every department that 2% is tough to stick within. But if something does come up throughout the year that is unplanned, we will work with the department, we'll work with the board and management to make sure that we can continue operations as necessary and cover some of those costs.
Perfect.
So quickly, I wanted to highlight general fund expenditures. I'll go through this pretty fast, but personnel costs around a $9.8 million budget increase or 16%. Operating costs $5 million for a total of $15 million or 16%. Most of general fund is made up of personnel costs at 63%, and operating costs make up 37%. So this slide pretty much takes the county's entire budget and where we're at and consolidates it into just pretty much two charts here. The top chart is broken down by DFA fund type. So we have general fund, which is for any general purpose. It's the county's primary operating fund. Special revenue funds are typically restricted by legislation, contract, or grant. So some of these budgets include road fund, health, flood, assessor 1%, fire, excise, indigent fund. We have the capital project funds, which includes all capital project funds such as the roads initiative, airport, grant projects, BOE warehouse, transitional housing fund, fire rescue admin complex. Debt service, which is exactly what that is for our debt obligations. We have enterprise fund, which is made up of our wastewater section, utilities. Internal service, the only internal service fund we have is our fleet department. And then trust and agency, which is just resources passed through the county that flow through, such as property taxes held for distribution to municipalities. So looking at the total estimated beginning cash, we're anticipating around $197 million. If we take into account budgeted revenue of $213.8, expenditures of $266.6, that leaves us with ending cash of around $144 million. After the reserve requirement, we would have budgeted adjusted ending cash of $114 million. And so this represents a use of reserves of around $52.77 million. So that number is typical when it comes to the budget process. We do budget for one-time figures out of reserves. I do want to highlight that the bottom section has been requested by the board in the past, so we wanted to provide a cash restriction breakdown by our unrestricted, designated, and restricted cash types. I will highlight our unrestricted cash. We're anticipated to begin the year at $76.3 million with revenues of $167.7, transfer outs of $490,000, expenditures of $185 million, which would give us budgeted ending cash of about $58 million. After we take into account the reserve requirement of $30.4, that leaves adjusted ending cash of $27.9 million. So from here, I will move on to our revenue and expenditure balance. And so our primary number one goal in developing the budget is to always maintain a balanced budget, or at least have recurring revenues exceed recurring expenditures. So on the left side of this slide, we have our total revenues and expenditures that represent that drawn reserves of $52.7 million. But if we take out the restricted funds draw, capital in process, new capital, potential retired leave payout, and AMR recovering funds that we plan to use to expand our fire rescue section, we actually have a surplus of around $2.5 million. So this surplus is represented by recurring revenues of $179.7 million versus expenditures of $177.2. So I know we look at that 2.5 and you see, wow, we can increase in various areas, but there are some pending items such as we are going to be on the last year of our SAFER grant, which accounts for around $2 million of our fire pay. And so going into next year, we will have to use recurring sources to cover that cost. Additionally, we do have union negotiations that we have to try and plan for during this process. At the same time, health insurance can change over the next month or so. So there are some moving items that we'd like to go into. From here, we'll dive into our new positions. So there are a total of 58 new positions included in this budget. I'll just go through this list. So community development has 6, which includes an inspector, code supervisor, 2 codes officers, and 2 laborers. Our flood section has 2 positions, which is deputy flood director and the fields operations and maintenance specialist 1. Flood is the only restricted department on here, so their funding is restricted for flood purposes. Fleet Services has 3 positions, fire emergency vehicle technician and 2 mechanics. IT has 2 positions, an IT systems analyst and a network engineer 1. And fire rescue is the bulk of it with 44 position requests. We have 6 paramedic floating responders, 1 EMS quality assurance position, a billing specialist, 15 firefighter EMTs, 3 lieutenants, and then 18 for a firefighter academy class that we anticipate to start in January. We also have 1 economic development position, which would be an admin assistant. And I do want to highlight that the way we estimate these budgets is we use the midpoint of the pay range, or if they're going to be on a step plan, the step 3 of that pay plan, and we use the employee-only benefit election to estimate these costs. So the total estimated budget impact is $4.1 million. And I will take another pause here just to see if there are any questions related to the position requests.
Anything? Roll it. Keep going, sir.
All right, so the next 3 slides will highlight capital in process, and so this is as submitted by departments. These amounts will change as projects progress and invoices are paid throughout this year, so come final budget time, we'll adjust these amounts to actuals that are needed to complete these projects. We will begin with detention center, which is water control project phase 2, stainless steel shower inserts, rear parking asphalt replacements, new desks for pods, and break area remodel. Facilities has various items, so we'll begin with the HVAC for district court, MERV to server room HVAC units, and Rincon Park. And I do want to highlight that the board has approved all of these projects already, either in last budget cycle or throughout the year. We also have for facilities, Guadalupe Park, La Mesa Community Center Park, LED lighting upgrades for the district court, public health, and the government center, East Mesa Park, and there was around $300,000 set aside for transitional housing within facilities budget. Some other projects include fairground improvements, the OEM building, which has 2 county portions, one of them being the LATCF fund and the capital project fund that was established to keep track of costs. Clerk's office has the BOE warehouse. We have a roads initiative phase 3 that we are completing or budgeting to complete. And then we have the list board meeting, these 2 items were approved, which is the transitional housing capital project fund and the fire admin complex, for a total of $23.6 million for budgeted capital in process. Now I will move on to new capital requests. And so this will cover the next 4 slides. First is DASO. So we do have portable radios, and it's part of the ongoing project to switch over to the correct frequency. We have fleet replacements which are necessary to keep fleet up to date. Detention center has the body cameras and tasers. So this is just the tactical equipment necessary for detention operation. We do have replacement service to help ensure security systems are functioning properly. Body scanner, which will improve security and alleviate physical pat downs, as the images will show hidden items that are trying to be smuggled in. The vacuum system, which is a large one for detention, is $3.5 million, and it's what that is to replace existing lines with air pressure systems to allow for control of the system, which would help keep inmates from passing notes, contraband, and it will further reduce damage to the wastewater system. Portables for warehouse. This is to allow for contract staff to have a workspace where they are currently working within the warehouse storage area. And then there's also Spartan equipment. So this will enable staff to scan strategically placed placards throughout the facility to show pertinent information on inmates, such as if they have allergies, their contraband history, or if they're, an aggressive inmate. The last item for detention center is the booking platform remodel. So this pretty much to get it up to ADA compliance. Engineering and roads has grant-related costs of around $5,000, which is to cover any costs that can't be covered by grant or an appropriation. And similar to that is facility and services for CES fees for grant and internal projects. Fleet has Fleetio Fleet software, which is going to replace their existing software and help create efficiencies. We have fleet vehicle requests of $2.1 million, so that's a total of 20 vehicles. where 17 of them will be vehicle replacements, if 3 of them would be new additions, 1 for IT, 1 for animal control, and 1 for the clerk's office. We also have fleet heavy-duty equipment, which includes 2 backhoe loaders and 1 electric forklift for the clerk's warehouse. And we also have Qualtrics software for HHS, which is to be used to collect, manage, evaluate, and analyze data for all department programs. It will especially help with the tracking of performance metrics related to the strategic plan. Moving on to IT, so we have access controls and security camera improvements. So this is for various facilities, including community centers, Jetport, Alex Building and Dello Community Center. The IT computer storage refresh is to address end-of-life storage hardware and keep the system up to date. We have the server refresh. This project will modernize and enhance the current server infrastructure. Virtual server platform replacement. So we'll be moving to a new server platform. This will reduce licensing costs, improve performance, enhance features, and other improvements. And then we also have the fiber broadband connection to the fair. OEM has a large format laminator and a utility terrain vehicle. The vehicle will help enhance the operational capacity of OEM when they're out in the field. Next up is utilities. So we have the Holguin wet well bypass. So this is to connect to wastewater mains that are currently dumping into a wet well that is producing a strong odor. We also have a UV disinfection system replacement parts. So we're required to keep these replacement parts on hand per requirements by NMED and EPA. We also have the SCADA system upgrade. The current system is obsolete and needs to be upgraded so the system monitors and controls various aspects of our utility infrastructure. The clerk's office has a tab remover for the absentee sorter. Probate has a mechanical assist for probate vault record storage. So probate office is running out of paper, but they are still required to have paper storage requirements or paper storage items. And we also have fire, which are 6 fire vehicles. These are necessary for use by paramedic floating responders positions that were requested. And from here, I'll move on to our restricted funds. Detention has corrections fund, which the fund is used for detention center projects. Fire rescue excise tax. So what we are doing is budgeting for the remaining balance in that fund for various fire projects, equipment, and vehicles. And then the flood commission for various flood items such as the flood warning system, lease upon construction, an ATV trailer, equipment, dump trailer, and 700 Palms building expansion. From here, I will move on to external agency funding levels. So these are funded by our PILT, which is payment in lieu of taxes, and our external agency fund. The first item, spay and neuter services, we're keeping flat at $100,000 out of the PILT fund. We typically have some budget in animal control, and their contract, I believe, is around $120,000 annually. We also have Movida, which was flat. MIRVDA has a $177,000 increase, or 7%. The transit district has an increase of $229,000, or 23%. So with the transit district, this was built based on a 3% CPI increase, plus $200,000 needed for capital to help with match requirements for federal grants related to 3 electric buses, charging stations, and installation costs. Metro Narcotics has a flat budget. The Animal Service Center has an increase of around $115,000, or 5%. So initially, the requested increase was about $630,000 overall, which would have been $315,000 for the county. But the city proposed that the service center use $400,000 out of fund balance, which left a remaining balance of $230,000 for the county and the city to split. Film Las Cruces and Hatch Library have flat budgets, and the USDA Wildlife Services is around a $1,000 increase, or 3%. So this chart on the right is just a comparison of our general fund revenue growth over the past 8 years versus our 3 major external agencies. So as you can see, over that time period, the transit district has grown the most at 251%, with Animal Service Center following at 160%, and then MIRVDA at 74%. So the general fund would be slightly lower if it wasn't for this year's revenue and the way GRT are going to be posting to general fund. But we did want to provide that comparison. And from here, I just wanted to jump into the strategic plan budget alignment and what our goal is and provide you with an update. So our goal is to align the county's budget with the strategic plan to be able to communicate how our resources are being spent at the strategy, vital condition, and urgent service goal, and pretty much the overall plan level. So on the right side, we have an example of what our goal is. And so this is a screenshot that we had from Achieve It that represents the county strategic plan in a hierarchy format. So at the very top, you'll see it's labeled as Doña County Strategic Plan. So we want to take the county's overall expenditure budget and say, this is how it breaks down between the 3 goals that we have established between each of the vital condition and urgent services, and one step further to the strategy level. And right now, we are currently working with 2 departments as case studies, which is our treasurer's office and IT section, to really dive into their budget and how it would be broken down to the strategic plan level. And we want to come back to the board and present that to you to see, if it's effective, if it makes sense, or if we need to take a different approach. And so ultimately, we want it to help improve our financial performance. So we want to ensure that money we spend contributes to our long-term vision and goals. It'll help the board and management enhance how we allocate our resources. So if we want to spend more on goal 1 and all of it's going into goal 3 right now, you can make decisions based on that information as well. And do our budget requests align with strategic goals? So that's big. We want to make sure that all of our budget requests amongst all the departments do align with the strategic plan that has been approved by the BOCC. And it'll also increase accountability. So are we utilizing the resources effectively, and are we meeting our performance measurements?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just had a couple of questions, and I don't know whether to go back on some of the capital requests. I can do that. I can wait till the end ends and that. And then I had a comment about the strategic plan. Okay. So, however, whatever, how you want, I don't know how you want to.
We have 2 slides left, so.
All right, that's fine.
Next steps, follow-up meetings and final adjustments. So we'll work on that the next 2 weeks. We have scheduled on the 13th and 27th BOCC meetings, so we'll either come back to the board with an additional work session or preliminary approval. And our budget is due to DFA by June 1st or May 31st. So with that, stand for any questions.
Now you can take it.
All right, sorry. Thank you, Lucio. Appreciate the presentation. I'll start with my comment around the strategic plan. And my hope is I'm kind of curious to see how the case study turns out, because I think when we initially established the strategic plan, the hope is that I guess for me, and just speaking for myself, it's twofold. One is that exactly like you said, in terms of the overall goals, tying to the vital conditions. But I think when we start looking at not just that, but also how the metrics that we were trying to roll out and work with the departments to establish how do we achieve these goals to improve and affect the vital conditions. But I don't know, we haven't, I think we were still working on trying to get that piece of it. So I think if we're starting to see, my hope is that we start to see the budget and we see how we're working to achieve those goals from like the midpoint to 5 years out. And exactly like you said, if for some reason, we're not hitting certain goals, then, we can dig in a little bit more and find out, does it require more budget? Does it require manpower? What specifically is the driver so we can start making progress in maybe areas that we're recognizing we're not? Or the other thought is that the goal may need to change because maybe as we're learning through this, it's not the correct goal, and we need to be able to pivot and adjust. But I think having this along with kind of a 5-year plan, and I think like we had earlier, I don't know if it was Dr. Lee, I don't know if that's his official title, but as he worked through that projection for potential GRT, I think it allows us to be able to start thinking multiple years. I know you and I have had this discussion, but that was kind of the hope with the strategic plan is let's start thinking multiple years so that this year we may not be able to fund this project, but then next year or the third year out, we can build in that plan of this is where we're going to start to put our monies as we go forward. So I'm excited to see where the state case study goes. The question I had, looking back at capital projects, and it was around utilities, and I guess the question I wanted to have around the SCADA system upgrade. When we say it's obsolete, is it just because it's out of date, or are we having obsolete parts of end of life issues with parts? Because you know, I think that's kind of two different things, is that if we're not able to get parts, then it's more urgent. But if it's just old, well, maybe I guess I'm trying to understand the driver of that. Good morning.
Good morning, Commission. Mireya with Utilities. So obsolete means, yes, it's out of date. So it needs to be upgraded.
Are we able, I guess when we say it's out of date, meaning we no longer get updates from the supplier, we're
Right.
having problems getting parts, replacements?
Correct. So if there's any components that go bad essentially, then you can get replacements.
Okay, got it. Thank you. I just, like I said, I just wanted to make sure and understand, like I said, because I know when we reach sometimes when you reach obsolescence, is that we run into parts of life.
Right.
And end of life parts supply issues and so on. So I just wanted to make sure that that's what it was.
Right, yeah, it's over 20 years old.
Okay,
So yeah, you can't get replacement parts for it at all.
awesome. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone joining us on WebEx today?
Susie, Commissioner Chaparro has her hand up.
I failed to put my hand down. Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds.
I'll just make one comment, sir, if you don't mind. In the last 6.5 years I've been here, 6 years I've been here, this is the best presentation of the budget that I've ever seen. And I want to congratulate and thank Lucio and our team at the county for working so diligently in order to put together something that really makes a lot of sense and gives us the information we need in order to make the decisions going forward for this county that are going to make sense. So I thank you all for the effort. Thank you very much for this presentation. I love it. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. Anything else? No? I think we're looking forward to the budget work session, the preliminary approval, May 13th, and going forward and getting this done, submitted, and finalized. I think we're ready. So there's no other questions, Lucio. I just want to commend you and your team and everyone that worked on this, and I as well am very excited about seeing how the strategic plan alignment works out and the case studies that you all have put together for us. So I think we're ready.
All right. I want to say thank you, and thank you to budget office staff. We couldn't do it without them, management, of course, and then the departments. They do a lot of the legwork, and they even keep us on track on some items that come up that we may have missed or had an error. So we do want to thank the departments as well.
Yeah, and since we have all of our departments here, if anyone wants to join us at the podium for anything, any final thoughts, questions, comments, concerns, excitement?
Mr. Chair.
Updates? Yes, Commissioner.
Sorry about this. I also want to say that the cooperation that is exhibited during this process between all the departments and the team and the leadership is unprecedented in my term as a county commissioner. And so I think the whole county deserves recognition and appreciation for what they brought to the table today. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. Mike, or Lucio, where's your mic so you can just like drop it on that one? Anyone, any departments? No? Okay. Is that it, Lucio?
That's it.
Weren't we here like 8 hours last year?
Yes.
I do remember 8 hours. Okay. With that being said, it is 10:19 and we will conclude our work session today. Thank you everyone for joining us and thank you for your work.